Hi everybody, it's Kitty. I'd like to thank Lori for asking me to be a part of her class this time around, her art journaling techniques class, which is well underway. Today I'm here to talk to you about a style of art journaling and a tool that you can use to enhance your art journaling and to expand your variety of techniques and things that you can include in your art journal. What I'm speaking of is called hybrid art journaling. When you think of a hybrid, you think of a blending or a mixing of two things to form a new one. And in this case, we're using regular art journaling techniques, pens, paint, paper, and with a very powerful tool that you have in your arsenal already and you may have been overlooking. And I'm talking about something that's sitting right in front of you at this moment, your home computer. Yes, that's right. It can be your most important friend in expanding your abilities and techniques in art journaling. And with that in mind, I am going to go over a few different subjects. I'm going to go over the types of programs that are used or can be used to manipulate images. I am going to go over some techniques. I am going to show you some examples of work that has been done or started using hybrid art journaling. And finally, I'm going to wrap up with some resources so that you can get yourself started if you're interested in trying it out. So without further ado, let me talk about programs. One thing you're going to have to do if you want to manipulate your images is you're going to have some way to get them into your computer. Most commonly, these are going to be a scanner and digital camera. For example, you can scan your artwork, you can scan a photo, you can scan an object or take a picture of it. Any one of these will get it in to your computer so that it can be printed out. What you're going to have to do in between the time you put it in and the time you remove it and use it is you're going to have a program to alter it. And when I say alter it, I mean to make it what you want to use out of that particular image. You may not want to use the entire photo, for example, if you're scanned a photo in. And I do have an example here for you. Let me look to see if I can pick it up without digging through too many pieces of paper. Probably not. I have so many pieces of paper here today. But it's all good because they all are to show us some examples of what we're going to be doing with your computer. As usual, it was just here about 5 seconds ago, and it is escaping me now. So let me take down my papers and flip through them rapidly. I apologize for the delay. I thought I had organized these. I'm so not organized. Some of these are really pretty. Here we go. This is a good example. I can show you a couple of examples. I made this image of a green cat a while back. And he was actually an image that I altered from a magazine. Anyway, green cat looks like this. So what if I didn't want green cat? What if I wanted pink cat? Well, I could use a computer program to make myself a pink cat instead by changing the color. I also, if you can see, I also changed the size. So in the program that I use, which is, in this case is called Paint Shop Pro, I can change the size and the color. And I changed them even smaller down here, a different color, tan, more like a cat color. And here I also did something called cropping, which means I cut off part of the image so that I can just use this portion of the entire image rather than the full figure that I've got there. And that's basically the idea of what you need a program for, the basics of what you need a program for. You can use a program to do all kinds of things depending on what kind of program you have. You can create images in a program. You can alter them like I've just shown you. Some of the main programs that are used in hybrid art journaling and hybrid scrapbooking are going to be Photoshop, which is a very high-end program. It has been around for a long time and is extremely well regarded. It's the top end, but you'll pay top end prices if you decide to invest in it. The people that make Photoshop have had some foresight and realized that not everybody can afford their top end program, and they've come out with something called Photoshop Elements, which I believe is in version 11 right now. It's an excellent program. It's widely used in the crafting community to manipulate and create images. It's moderately priced, somewhere around $100 or so, maybe a little bit more. But it is going to have a lot of support online. There are a number of classes available out there online to show you how to use it and utilize it in different techniques, how to make it work for you. Other programs are Illustrator, Painter, PaintShop Pro, which is what I use. Those vary in price. PaintShop Pro is around $100 too. But suppose you don't have any money. I know that feeling all too well. There is a program you can download online. You'll have to look it up. I'm not exactly sure of the link. But it's called GIMP, G-I-M-P, and it does a lot of the things that Photoshop does, but it's free, and you can download it and install it on your computer. If you don't even want to do that, maybe it's not your computer and you really don't have the ability to download and install things on it, you're just using it. There is a program out there called PicMonkey. It's actually a website program that runs on the web. It's www.picmonkey.com. It's a wonderful program. You can do all sorts of things in it. The one limitation is that I've never found a way to start an image in PicMonkey. But you can do just about anything else once you've got it in there. You can draw on it, you can manipulate it, you can cut it, you can resize it, you can add borders, you can put it through any number of different processes that colorize different parts of it, soften it, sharpen it. It's a lot of fun. You probably could spend days just playing with it. Believe me, I've wasted many hours just doodling around with it. I get around the fact that I can't, or I haven't figured out, there must be a way, haven't figured out a way to start an image out in it by using the program Paint, which is included in Windows under Accessories. Using that little program, which is a very basic image editor and is also something you can use for basic edits of your photos in a pinch, but it's very limited in its functionality. However, you can use it, and you can use it to create an image. Even if you just create a blue square, you can then save that blue square and go to PicMonkey.com, upload it. It says, going to say edit a photo, pretend like it's a photo even though it's just a blue square, and from there you can work all sorts of editing magic on it and change it from something that was just a blue box into abstract artwork or text art. You can actually use words, put words in, put little images on it. They actually have a selection of little like iconic images like hearts, stars, flowers, animals. They also have some seasonal images right now. They had some for Halloween, I believe, and now they have holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah, that type of thing. A lot of fun to play with, and you can't go wrong because it's free, and you don't even have to install it. So those are my top suggestions. Of course, if you can afford the Cadillac or the BMW and you want to go right for it, go to Photoshop, pick yourself up a copy and a couple of books, take a class, and learn how to, manipulate your images and edit your images there. But I suggest most people can get by with Photoshop Elements. Pick up a copy, maybe used, or a lower end version. Maybe somebody upgraded and no longer needs their version and is willing to sell the older version. If you can't do that, you have GIMP, which is free. You can download it. And after that, if you don't even have the ability to download or don't feel like downloading and installing anything, then you can try PicMonkey or any of a number of other similar programs that are available online. I'll be back in a few seconds after the break with some of the things that you can do with these lovely editing programs. Back again. I wanted to give a little addendum to my previous segment and say that the things you can do with your computer and your scanner and printer include things like the resizing, recoloring, and cropping. You can change and fix colors, like if you have a picture with red eye. You can create brand new artwork. It's basically what I was talking about with the PicMonkey. You can start out with a blue box and add all kinds of things to it online and wind up with a new piece of artwork. You can scan your own artwork and use it. You can create collages with PicMonkey or with any of the image editing programs and go from there. Something else you can use, and that I didn't mention before, was a Wacom tablet or a pen tablet, which is a digital drawing surface where you draw with the pen onto a tablet surface that sort of looks like a computer screen, and you actually draw your artwork digitally into your computer. And that's another way. It's also a cost, of course, but if you're very serious about creating your own digital images for using, then it's something you might want to look into just for fun, or as an investment type of thing for the future. And actually, I'm not going to talk about techniques next. I am going to talk about surfaces. Another great thing about having your images stored in your computer and ready to print out is that you can use all kinds of different surfaces. You can use your typing paper, printer paper, just like this. I just used this as an example page, so I didn't do it on anything fancy. It's just on a piece of computer paper. You can do something really cool. You can take a piece of tracing paper. Now this is a fairly stiff piece of tracing paper. Not all of them are quite as hard, or some of them are more flexible, softer, I should say. And they're going to be a little more trouble going through a printer. But my Epson $69 printer has no problem printing on tracing paper. And you can see that I've printed a couple of different things on here. I've printed some words. I printed a couple of little pictures of a rose and some of my own artwork up here, and a picture of my kitty cat down here. But it's just on tracing paper. You can pretty much see through it. You can see my hand back there. This can give you interesting techniques. I'll show you an example later of what it looks like when you take a tracing paper image and lay it on top of your art journaling page, or one of the ways it can look. Some of the other things you can use, vellum. If you do any scrapbooking, you probably have vellum around. Very often print. This is actually a piece of vellum that comes sized for the computer, 8.5 by 11. It has a little bit of a texture to it, you can see. Print your words on here, your sentiments or whatever, and cut them out, add them into your page with a little bit of glue. I find a Xyron adhesive runner to be an excellent way to get words, especially with vellum, onto a page without it having a visible glue quality. They make vellum glues. Somebody's bumping around. I think a cat's trying to get in. Not unusual. Anyway, you can use other kinds of paper. This is a they call it an onion skin or a laid paper. You use it to do fancy documents, resumes, that type of thing on. You can use that. It's a little thicker than vellum or tracing paper, but still thinner than regular paper. Here's another type of vellum, but it's a plain vellum. So you can buy it at Michael's. You can even use scrapbook paper. You could print something right on here, words, or you could print an image over the top of it. You can buy paper in the Michael's or the scrapbook store that's sized for a printer. Here's a copy, a nice piece of orange. I'm just showing you a few of the different surfaces. Cardstock, a little bit thicker than paper. Nice if you're going to use it for maybe making some embellishments. We'll show you one of those toward the end. I believe this is called Lotta paper. It is a very fancy paper with a texture to it. Buy it in an art supply store. I've actually been able to successfully feed this into my printer and print on top of it. This is a print that comes with it in this case, but I've actually used this on the printer. Now, your amount of success is going to depend on a lot of things. Some printers are not going to be as friendly and not want to accept paper. Please don't jam your printer up. What I would suggest is I usually put at least 1 or 2 sheets of regular printer paper in behind, because my printer feeds from the top, and that way it's got something to lean up against, especially if it's a thinner paper like this, or the vellum or the tracing paper. And watch it. If you can't get it to go through, if it starts to jam up your printer, stop and follow the manufacturer's instructions for removing a paper jam. Don't pull it out, don't rip it out. Try not to let it go through all the way if it's jamming up. Most often, it'll work. People are even printing on tissue paper. There are a number of nice tutorials out there showing you how to prepare a piece of tissue. I'm not talking about like Kleenex tissue. I'm talking about the tissue paper like you make the old-fashioned tissue paper flowers out of. Ironing it or smoothing it out and then basically affixing it to another piece of paper to make it thicker, and then sending the sandwich basically through the printer. But I'm not going to get into that. It's a little bit more than I'm qualified, I think, to like discuss. I haven't tried that yet. You can use some other types of paper, like a paper with a ledger or a grid or a ledger like this. You can use it as your background. You can print over it, print on it. That is just a few of the things that you can print on. And one of the things I'm going to mention is that when you're printing, make sure that you save your images that you are going to use for printouts. Make sure you save them at 300 dpi or better. How this works is that DPIs, or basically a holdover term, dots per inch, it means the resolution of the image. The detail of the image is crisper the more DPI. On the web, an image with 72 DPI looks just fine, If you print it out with 72 dpi, unless it's a very plain or simple image, it's not going to have as good of a quality. So when you're learning, experimenting, fiddling around with your programs, make sure you save it with at least a 300 dpi. My other suggestion is going to be to save it as a type of file called a PNG. This is suitable for pretty much any image application on the web nowadays or in printing, and it has distinct advantages over the two other common file types, which are GIF and JPG. It sounds like a bunch of initial gobbledygook. And just remember, stick with PNG if you can. You'll get a consistent quality image with as much resolution as you possibly can by using that type of file. And I'm going to take a quick break and be right back with some more information for you. Thanks. Back again. Now we're getting into the fun part. We're going to talk about printing. And printing the images that you have created or edited and manipulated in your computer on the program that you've chosen, and doing something with it on your art journal page. So basically, I'm going to give you some types of techniques, and I'm going to show you examples of how I put those into use. There are a couple of things you should know about printers. Most of us at home have what's called an inkjet printer. Inkjet ink, for the most part, is not I'm drawing a blank. It'll run. Let's put it that way. It's a dye-based ink for the most part. And if you hit it with water or your trusty matte medium, for the most part it'll run to some degree. Some of them stay pretty well without running, but if you're going to do any type of coloring over it, adding stuff on top of it, which I do all the time in my art journaling, nothing ever stays, plain and simple on top usually. You're either going to have to deal with the running of the colors, or you can take some steps to prevent the color from running. One of the ways I've found, if using an inkjet printer, is to let it sit overnight after you printed it. A lot of times this helps, keeps it from running as much if you're not going to do too much manipulating. The other thing you can do is spray it with a substance like this workable fixative. You don't need to use this brand. There are other companies that make varieties of this. There's also something called Preserve It by this same company that's supposed to work as well. Anyway, you spray with this, let it dry thoroughly. I think it says dry after an hour, handle after an hour, recoat anytime. I'd say give it a couple of hours and make sure it's nice and dry. What this will do is this, if you hit it with water at this point, let me get my water bottle. It's way the heck over here. Woo. Got a bit of exercise there. What'll happen then is that you can spray water, and I'm spraying a little more water than you're probably going to use. But this one's been sprayed, and you can see these letters aren't running. They're not dripping. If I used it without having sprayed it in advance with the workable fixative, I'd have gotten a little smear, and I'll show you what I mean. You might be able to see it. This piece of paper here, I didn't treat the corner right in this area with the workable fixative, and you could see it bled just a little bit out there on the edge. See it up there? See the bleeding? Now I treated the top. The reason this paper is sort of wrinkly is that I treated the top with the workable fixative. Then I hit it with water, and of course this is just typing paper, regular old copy paper, and it wrinkles the paper a little bit, but there's no running up there at the top, whereas there's a little bit at the bottom. Now you see, you could manipulate this. You could put other colors over it. You could color over it with gelatos, your pens, your markers, etc. If you've coated it with the workable fixative, 99.999% of the time, you are not going to have it run. You do need to be careful if you're using a delicate paper. If you're adding color, liquid, paint, whatever that has liquid in it, water sprays, dye inks, any dilution sprays. If you use any of those, that paper gets weak until it's dry again. So be very careful with it. Let it dry in between coats of things. If you coat it with matte medium, you can work over that. What I would suggest is spray with a workable fixative, then use the matte medium. Now this is inkjet printers, and for most of the techniques that I am going to talk about, inkjet printers work just fine. They work more or less on every technique, except they don't work very well on the transfer technique. For that, you're probably going to want to take your images, print them out, then take them to a copy store like Office Max, Office Depot, Staples, and have them print them up with a toner-based copy. Laser copiers are usually toner-based rather than dye ink-based. That will give you a copy that you can use for the transfer technique. But let me show you a couple of pages that I created, and I'm going to show you back. I'm going to take this wet piece of paper again and show you. I printed this out. Develop an attitude of gratitude. I printed that out on my printer, and then what I did was I just took my scissors and I snipped out the words. I put just like I have it here. Develop an attitude of gratitude. Then I laid it on my journal page, and I laid it down and glued it in, and you can see the strips there in the background. I put it on a background that was painted pink, painted a couple of shades of pink actually. Then I laid in the strips of words, and then I doodled. I doodled the flowers over it, and then I just kept going and made my journal page. Develop an attitude of gratitude. Now I used text that was printed, but I also embellished it with my own handwriting. If you look at the bottom and around the sides, I've written different things to be grateful for. Be thankful for flowers, give thanks for friends, be grateful for pink. So you can see that you can do something simple, very simple, print out some words, in a fancy font, glue them right to the page, and you can get a nice journal page going fairly easily. I used different color ink, I used acrylic paint in the background, I used glitter, used a little bit of everything. I used a black Sharpie marker down here. My next example is, this is a page in progress. Now you see this one hasn't been completed, but I'm going to put it up close. You can see it's a heart in red, and it's already got some glitter on it, but you can see the background there. See the ledger background? What I did was I printed this up on that ledger paper that I showed you earlier. How did I do that? Well, it started out by hand. I actually drew a cute little heart on a piece of paper. When I got it like I wanted it, I scanned it into my computer through the scanner, and then I took it into my program and I edited it. In this case, I edited it in such a way that I gave it a background, and I positioned the heart at a different angle, and I cropped the corners off, or cropped the edges off. So now, instead of having the entire heart, I enlarged it and gave it color and a different aspect. Then what I did for this was I blew it up really big in the computer so that it would fit my entire page, which is what I wanted to do. Use this type of paper in my printer, ran it through with the red background, printed it out, glued it right on, and then I started coming in with some glitter, some Stickles glitter here on the tips, and I've actually gone back over and emphasized the lines, the black lines. Don't know where this is going to go from here, but this just goes to show you that you can take the simplest of art, very easy. I'm not an artist in the sense that I don't really draw portraits and do a lot of fancy fine art, but you can make, using your computer, using PicMonkey, you probably could do this too without much problem, and get it from little plain heart to nice big background using your computer, your printer, and a nice piece of software. This is an entire finished or in processed segment of journaling. The next one I'm going to show you involves something else you can do with your printer. You can print out little silhouette images. Excuse me. See how I've got the kitty cats? 3 different sizes. And then what I did was I cut him out with a little X-Acto knife, and I made a stencil out of him. You can do this with your own artwork. You can find clip art online. I didn't know what size I wanted, so I made him 3 different sizes. I can go back and cut these 2 out and make 2 more stencils if I wanted. But in this case, I used the small one. You see, I just stenciled him onto a pink background. And I used a store-bought stencil for the wording and the hearts. But you could do your own words, your own hearts, just the same way. Print it up and cut them out. In this case, you really can't tell, at least I don't think you can tell, that cat that's being used here wasn't something that you bought at the store, but simply a little outline snipped right out of paper. And see on the back, I was thinking about a class I'm taking, and word of the week was pity. Actually, pity isn't pretty was my theme, but I'll have to show you that page another time. So you can make stencils. You can do all kinds of stencil work. So I'm putting that one away for now. And the final one I have on here was the one that I was talking about, a transfer technique. Transfers don't really work so well with inkjet printers because the ink doesn't hold fast. It runs. Whereas with a laser copy, it bonds more to the paper and it'll actually come out on the transfer fine. What I did was I made some copies. In this case, let's see, some butterflies down here. You see these butterflies? Alright, I just want to show you the copies that I had used. I just took these to my Office Depot nearby, and this is some copyright free images, vintage ephemera that I found online. This lady I'm using. There's a very nice website, and I cannot remember the name of it. Elegant Word Art by Bethany. That's it. And she does some beautiful text art. And if you notice, it's reversed. It says follow your dreams, but it's backwards. And the reason it's backwards is because when you lay it down for the transfer process, you're going to be laying it down upside down onto the paper. So you need to have any words or images that need to be oriented in a certain way printed so that you're using the reverse of them. And I also had this one where I use the Eiffel Tower. Alright, and what I did with that, very simple. I prepared a background with some blue acrylic, and then I took and I cut out the images that I want. Now, I cut out as close to the image as I can to do this technique, because it will leave a border, a white border around the edges if you leave white on there. So I cut it out as close as I could to the image. See, the butterflies are pretty much cut out. And at that point, once my paint was dry, I took some matte medium and I laid it on my blue background, and then I adhered my Follow Your Dreams. I just took the cutout version, and now what I did was I burnished it. I used a craft scraper tool to like flatten it really good against the background. Not too hard, you don't want to scrape the paper away, but you want to have it nice and flat, and you want to have a good adhesion. I always work from the center out if I'm working outward or up and down. You don't want to drag the leftover matte medium back up onto the back of the paper. You're going to have paper stuck to your background for a little while for this technique to work. The matte medium is going to stick it. Then what I did is I let it sit for a while to dry. It takes a while to dry. It takes maybe an hour. When it was dry, I then sprayed it lightly with my mister bottle and ever so gently begin to rub the paper. Now the paper will be now wet, and it'll start to ball up. And you'll take a layer off, and you'll start to see your image appear underneath. You're going to need to do this over a period of time. It's not all going to come up at one time, and it's very delicate, so you want to do it with a soft fingertip. You don't want to like rub it. You want to like caress it. You'll know when you're finished, because in the in-between stages, which I'm not going to show you here, you'll feel a velvety texture, and you'll see a hazy quality over your image when it dries. So you will do the matte medium, put your paper over with your image, burnish that image down, smooth it out from the inside outward, let it dry for about an hour, spray it with a little water, get it damp, and then gently rub until the paper starts to come off. When you've got that first layer off, put it aside and let it dry again. I get to do this when I'm watching TV. I'll take a piece of a newspaper, lay it on my lap. That way to catch the paper that falls off the paper rolls. And put it aside, let it dry, come back, spritz it again. Now it'll get hazy in between. They're going to do that's maybe 5 or 6 times. Let it dry really good. You'll see it hazy again. Spray it, rub, 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 till you get another layer off. Now sometimes you might get a little too much off. Now you see I've cut her a little unevenly on purpose because I know this is going to happen. You can see in a couple of instances where a little more than I wanted to take off came off, like right here in this corner, and then over here on the side. That's a little more even than I cut away. I cut it raggedy on purpose. Actually, this one came out really good. Sometimes you'll get little breaks in your words. If you're using a large image, it's a little harder to get it to look nice. These really came out good. If you get a spot that's broken, you can just incorporate that into your artwork, or you can perhaps use a little marker. I could take a little marker where it's, see where it's like torn right here on the edge. I could take a little black marker and a little pen here, and I can just sort of fill that in a little bit, just ever so lightly, so that you don't see it as bad. There's a couple of spots I see when I look at it up close. I can see a few little spots, but it just looks vintage. It just looks old to me. It doesn't look bad. But you see now I fixed that white spot on the corner over here. You can't see that white area anymore. Now down here, I didn't transfer. All I did was I cut the Eiffel Tower out and I pasted him in. Now I did that on purpose in this case because I wanted to have it a little more clear, a little less vintage looking, a little less hazy, because I wanted it to be the realization of her dream in this case. And this is a page in process for following your dreams. I mean, you can tell like she's dreaming and the butterflies are her dreams flying to Paris. But the techniques available out there online, there are many, many different ways to transfer. Matte medium is only one of them. I could go on. There's a whole book. I actually have a whole book here called Image Transfer Workshop. This one is by Darlene Olivia McElroy and Sandra Doran Wilson. This goes over different techniques for transferring your original art as well as printed art from lasers, laser printers, and inkjet printers. There are resources out there. There's a very active Yahoo group for image transfers. Explore if you're interested in transferring to your art journals. What I would suggest is if you're not using a separate journal page like this, like we're doing for the class, that you refine your technique by practicing, because it does take a little bit of getting used to know how much pressure to use, how many times to rub it off when you've got to the end. I usually can tell by, like I said, there's a little bit of a fuzz, like a fuzzy, velvety feel when you don't have all the paper off. When you get all the paper off, usually you don't have that feel anymore, and the images look fairly clear, like these. I should have left it some in progress. That would have been a little better, but you know me. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, catch my breath, get a sip of water, and I'll be back with more. Thank you. I'm back again, got my water, and now I can have my second wind. Or maybe that's my third wind. I have a few more things to show you. We talked before, when I showed you the heart that I had drawn, how I got the heart into my computer by drawing on paper, scanning it, and then adding color and cropping it and resizing it to give the heart that I used as the background printout. Now I also have done a kitty cat face, and it doesn't look very complicated or very artistic even, maybe. Very simple kitty cat face. And what I did was I drew him and I scanned him into the computer, and then I took him over to PicMonkey.com. And using the program there, online, I colored him. And I made him an abstract, like a kitty cat, an abstract background. Alright. And that's just playing around till I got it like I like it. You can reverse what you do, so if you do something, make it step on PicMonkey and you don't like it, you can go back and reverse it. So I played with him on PicMonkey till I got him like I liked him. Then I printed him out, and I printed him in this case on some of the tracing paper, very thin tracing paper, and then I put him on a blue background, And what you can see now is that, well, I cut just the face out first of all. I just cut the face part out. Now you can see that I've lost a lot of the color definition, but that's okay. You can see the colors coming through in the background, even though he's on the blue. You see the blue background through more than the entire colors. But he integrates into the picture. In other words, this, you can't really tell he's added on. It looks like he was drawn on to the paper. But I don't have to redraw him. I've got him there. And then, of course, I started embellishing him. I put some glitter, me and the glitter. And I drew his whiskers, because you see, he didn't have any whiskers here. Now he does. And that's a good way of also blending it into the image, is adding something that like extends beyond the added portion. And this is great. I mean, I'm just using it for the basic, you know, shapes and images that I'm using. A heart, a kitty cat face. But you can use it to reproduce and preserve your artwork that you don't want to mess up, or that you want to use in an art journal page, but also want to preserve and keep for the future. And here's a unusual piece of artwork I did. This is actually made by ironing a bunch of plastic grocery bags together. Yep, that's what this is. Plastic grocery bags. And then I painted over it with different acrylic paints. And on top of that I put some matte medium to seal it. And then I couldn't bring myself to use it for anything. And I was like, oh my goodness. I said, I've created this, and yeah, it's kind of a piece of art all its own, but I'd like to use this background. I really like it. So I scanned it into my computer. And now I can print it out. And I can use it over and over again. I can use portions of it. I can crop it. I can use it this way. I could actually change, like I showed you at the very beginning, I can change the colors. I've got my art preserved. I've got my art used and usable again and again. I could make a series of art journal pages using this as a background and doing different treatments on top of it. Another thing I had was I liked this little background I did as an experiment with different textures. I got a stencil stamp, and I did an umber color, like a color wash from the pink to the purple, and didn't want to use it either. I really haven't figured out the right use for this yet. Probably a card at some point, but I like it and I want to use it, and I decided I wanted to use it as a background to a journal page, so I scanned it and I enlarged it. So now I have a large version of my art, my background, that I can use anytime I want. I can print it out, I can use it, I can shrink it, I can make it an ATC background just to use for an artist trading card, to use it in my journal. Could print it out for any number of uses. There's really more ways to use your computer for your art journaling than I can cover in 2 hours, much less 1. And I'm probably yakking too much as it is. I'd like to show you 2 more things that are really, really cool, if you ask me. One is that you can print out embellishments for your page. Yeah, you could embellish your page with this flower here, but you can also print out representations of things and make a 3-dimensional object to add into your page. For example, this flower. This is from a place called Eleni.com, and she has a selection of flowers there. And this is called Orange Rose, I believe. Paper Rose Template Orange. and I printed it out. I just printed this one out on plain typing paper, computer paper again, but you could print it out on a cardstock or a thicker paper to give it more substance. Then I trimmed all the little pieces out, and I assembled the rows. Basically, just follow the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And then you get a rose. I think this is where I can actually show it to you. Now, what I've done now is I've actually taken additional coloring and added some ink, some glitter around the edges. I actually colored sort of both sides, though I'm envisioning this as sitting on a journal page. Let me grab one of my pages here, just so I can, heck, I'm just going to grab a background. See, I'm envisioning it just, you know, embellishing a page like that. And I glued a button in the middle. So there, not a very good example, but there we go. You can make little doodads, embellishments of all sorts, printing out things on different types of paper, cutting them out. This one's 3D, like I said, it's a little rose. Could put him on my tiara. But that's a wonderful use of your computer to add texture and dimension to your pages. The next thing I wanted to show you was, I don't have the original anymore because I actually used it for something. And what it was is I painted and I doodled all over a piece of paper. I painted, doodled, scribbled. You can probably see it, little scribbles on there. Use plastic caps to like make little circles in the background, so forth and so on. And I scanned them into my computer. Well, it's kind of puny looking if you ask me. It was a pastel-y like paper color. I think I started out with a pink paper in the background. Anyway, I got him in there, and then I didn't like him so much, so I fiddled with him in my program until I liked the colors a little better. And that's a blown up version of the same image with a little bit of colorization done. And I really liked this image, and I wanted to do something extra special with it. So I took it to a place called spoonflower.com, and they have a program there where you upload your images, and then you can see how they're going to look printed on fabric. So you can take your fabric, your computer image, your own artwork, your own digital artwork in this case, or scanned artwork, and take it over to Spoonflower, and they will print it up and mail it to you. And it came really fast. Now the colors aren't the same, because what I did was, when I got over to Spoonflower, I decided I wanted some more blues in here, and there's an editing function that goes to PicMonkey, and I took it over to PicMonkey and I added a little more blues in it so that it had a little more varied color than the reds or the pale pastels. But you can see that I've taken my artwork and I've made it into fabric, and you could use this fabric in your art journaling. You could use it to make an art doll, any number of things. But it's just another great way of using your computer to preserve your art and to extend your ability to use your art. I think that's mainly the most important thing, is that the computer gives you a way to extend the possibilities of what you can do with art journaling. With a computer, a printer, a scanner, and a program or a web page program like PicMonkey, you can create and edit and add to your pages in all sorts of ways. I am getting close to my self-imposed time limit of an hour. I have some resources to give, but I haven't written them down. Of course, I gave you the program called GIMP, G-I-M-P, which is a free program that you can use and download online and use to edit your images and create new images. There's the web page picmonkey.com, which you can use to edit your images. There are any number of resources for getting free images. One I like is doverpublications.com. They offer a free sampler of vintage ephemera, vintage images that they send out every week if you sign up. And they also publish a bunch of books that have copyright-free images. There's a place called Karen's Whimsy online. She has a lot of beautiful pieces of vintage artwork there. Just poke around in your browser. I think the Library of Congress even has an image resource library. If you're going to be using your images that you're printing out for artwork that you're going to sell, make sure they're copyright free. If you're using them for your own edification, for making your own personal art journals, then it's really not as important. But then again, for example, I picked this off the web, and I try to make sure that I gave Ellen credit for it, even though since I'm using it in my class. But if I use the flower I made in an art journal page, there's no need to credit her. And in fact, there's a lot of ways to do this that are similar, so that you probably could get by without crediting her in this case. But since I was actually using her template, I was a good girl and credited her. I hope you've enjoyed this brief overview of how your computer, printer, and scanner can enhance your art journaling experience. And I'd really love to see some of the things you do. If you want to go ahead and post them up on the site for the class, or go ahead and email them to me even at ALLEYMARZIACAT@yahoo.com. And if you have any questions, if I can help you in any way or answer any questions that you might have, make any suggestions for you, I'd be happy to do so. And again, thanks to Lori for asking me and allowing me to sit in and give y'all a little bit of an overview of using your computer in art journaling. Thank you, and you'll have a great evening. Bye-bye.